In Miami, a young man is abducted at gunpoint. The kidnappers demand a fortune and threaten to kill. The police and FBI uncover disturbing leads and look for answers in the smallest clues in a desperate race to find the victim and bring him home to his family.
Kidnapping can shatter a family, bringing terror and heartache without warning. In 1984, with the flash of a gun, an ordinary business transaction became a violent abduction. In seconds, the son of a wealthy Miami developer was gone. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The kidnappers' motivations seemed to be money, but agents would learn this case and its resolution were more complicated than anyone believed.
Miami, Florida, Tuesday, August 7th, 1984. At 6 o'clock, the sales office of real estate developer Jesus Portela was closing. Mr. Portela had emigrated from Cuba 22 years earlier, building a successful business in Miami. His 22-year-old son, Mario, was recently married and worked as a salesman for his father, as did Mario's uncle. A little after 6, a couple approached the office. Mario and his uncle went out to talk with him. The couple asked about condo prices. The man seemed anxious as they spoke. The uncle explained that the office had closed. He asked them to return in the morning. At the couple's request, he went inside to get some brochures for them. He didn't see what was happening outside. An armed man had pulled up, and the three were abducting Mario. The uncle spotted temporary tags on the car, but only got the last 3 numbers. He told Jesus what he saw. Mario, forced into a blue and gray car, heading north on 122nd Avenue. Then he called the police. But Mario's father couldn't wait for the police to arrive. He went looking for his son. Soon he spotted a car matching the description of the kidnapper's vehicle. For years, he had carried a licensed gun for protection. Now, he was ready to use it. But it was the wrong car. Realizing he couldn't find the kidnappers himself, Jesus returned to wait for the authorities. The Metro-Dade police responded to the kidnapping call. For Detective Alvaro Romero, abductions were not unusual in 1984.
At that time, we were inundated with kidnappings. We had probably one kidnapping a month related to narcotics or drug-related kidnappings, where the victims would either be involved in drugs themselves or possibly family members were involved in drug dealings.
But detectives quickly realized Mario's abduction was different.
Questioning Mr. Portela and recognizing the fact that he was a prominent businessman in the community led us to believe that it was not narcotics related and strictly a financial gain for the people who kidnapped his son.
It meant anybody who knew of Mr. Portela's wealth could be a suspect. Hoping the kidnappers left some trace behind, crime scene technicians dusted the door for fingerprints. Mario's uncle believed they might have touched it as they peered inside. No usable prints were found. Less than an hour after the kidnapping, the phone rang.
Hello? See?
Speaking in Spanish, the caller asked for Mario. Mr. Portela didn't recognize the voice.
No. ¿Quién habla?
The caller then announced he was part of a terrorist group that was holding Mario for $3 million in ransom. Although no recording equipment was in place, a Spanish-speaking detective listening in identified the caller's accent as Colombian. The caller threatened to kill Mario if Jesus notified police or the FBI, and warned that the group was watching the Portela house and gave the address. The distraught father pleaded to speak with his son.
Hello?
The kidnapper announced he would call Jesus's home in 3 days.
Hello?
Police could not trace the call, but it helped them understand the type of criminal they were facing.
We felt the kidnappers were very violent. They took precautions as far as the phone calls that they were making, and they were very serious in their threats. They knew what they were doing, and we took them very seriously.
As with any kidnap for ransom, Metro-Dade police called the Miami field office of the FBI for assistance, and the case went to Special Agent John Gill.
The FBI was involved from the very onset. The very fact that a large ransom was demanded caused it to fall into the jurisdiction of what we call the Hobbs Act.
The Hobbs Act makes extortion affecting interstate commerce a federal crime, and Mr. Portela's business reached across state lines. Agents from the FBI's reactive squad installed recording equipment on Mr. Portela's office and home phones and arranged to have all incoming calls traced. The next day, Special Agent Gill wanted to talk with Jesus Portela, but not at the trailer or at home. He asked Jesus to meet him at an empty garage. Agents watched the entrances and exits of the garage for any sign of the kidnappers, but did not see anyone. As far as they could tell, it was safe for Gill to question Mr. Portela.
Portela. Yes. My name is John Gill. Your credentials, sir. I have been assigned the administrator of this kidnapping case.
The agent asked if Mr. Portela knew of anyone who had a grudge against him, or if he had ever been threatened. The worried father could think of only one minor incident. He said that 8 months earlier, a man and woman burst into his office. He knew the woman. Her name was Rose de Parias. She recently purchased a condominium from him and said she discovered her neighbor's payments were lower than hers. Mr. Portela explained that the difference was because the neighbor had obtained a better finance rate. It was between the buyer and the bank.
The payments were not made to him at all. The financier had paid for the condominium, and he was out of the picture, so to speak.
The two refused to accept the explanation. the man began threatening him, demanding that Portela refund the money. But there was nothing he could do. Before they left, Rose de Parias vowed she would get her money back, one way or another. Mr. Portela had reported the incident to police.
And the police talked to this particular woman and explained to her the circumstances of financing and interest payment, and she apologized, and Mr. Portela just assumed that this had all gone away.
Agents later tracked down Rose de Parias and learned she was living in another state during the kidnapping. When they confirmed her alibi, they ruled her out as a suspect. Investigators were getting worried. With each day that passes, the chances of finding a kidnapping victim alive drastically diminish. They hoped the kidnappers would call again.
And the victim,
If they did, the reactive squad was prepared, having wired Jesus Portela's home and office with telephone tap and trace equipment.
Meet at his office, right? All right, I'll be there.
Special Agent Gil Orantia and other investigators needed to be there to monitor the calls and run the equipment. But getting into the home unseen would be tricky.
The initial calls and our indications were that they were watching his home, they being the kidnappers. We were concerned that they might be able to detect that I was coming in.
They needed Mr. Portela's help.
I was crouched in the back seat as we drove to his home. We went into the garage and then we went into the house. We wanted to be able to record the phone calls and be able to capture everything that was said to him regarding any ransom demands.
Agents and Metro-Dade detectives would take shifts, staying with the Portela family 24 hours a day. They briefed Jesus on how to handle the calls. He would be the lead in the effort to get his son back.
One of the things early on, obviously, was to determine if he's even alive or not. And we discussed with Mr. Portela some of the things that he could ask the kidnappers, which only Mario Portela would know, proof of life questions, if you would, that could come back to us to verify, yes, we know he's alive.
In building a profile of Mario, with details about his life, including favorite foods and names of pets, the agents got to know the young man.
Mario Portela was the all-American kid. He had gone to school. He had maintained outstanding grades. He had just gotten married to a young lady, and they were newlyweds with a bright future. Everybody loved him. The reason that this case was so traumatic for so many people is that so many people could identify with them. They were the type of family that we all aspire to be, and they were living the American dream, but they ran into a nightmare.
As promised, the kidnappers called 3 days after the abduction. The caller ordered Mr. Portela to listen to a taped recording. The voice on the tape was Mario. He pleaded with his father to pay the ransom money, warning the kidnappers was serious and would kill him if he called the police or the FBI. Jesus told the caller he had discreetly begun the process of securing the money from his bank. Agents reminded Mr. Portela to ask the proof of life questions, including what Mario's nickname was as a child and the name of the dog his wife used to have. The man agreed to call back with the answers. Mr. Portela had kept him on the line long enough for agents to trace the call to a Miami payphone. But the caller had gone before surveillance units arrived. In the harrowing days after the kidnapping, Mr. Portela received several other calls. Speaking in Spanish, a different man talked vaguely and mysteriously of a business proposition apparently unrelated to the abduction.
The demeanor of Mr. Portello at the time was, I really don't have time to talk to you about business because I have other problems. This individual indicated on several calls that he, in fact, was a person that could help solve the problems. His persistence in trying to communicate his involvement in whatever Mr. Portello's problem was caused us to be highly suspicious that somehow he was playing a role or a part in the kidnapping or the ransom demands.
Jesus kept the man on the line, and investigators pinpointed the source of the call. It was coming from the same area as the kidnapper's earlier call. Surveillance units made it to the scene in time to spot the person on the phone. They followed him to a fast food restaurant, where he emerged with a takeout bag. From their biographical profile of Mario, investigators knew the restaurant's burgers were his favorite. They then followed the man to an apartment complex, where his behavior was even more suspicious.
When he took the hamburgers to an apartment and delivered them through the door, having no conversation with the recipient, and this was the brand of hamburgers that Mario and his father fancied, yes, at that point we were suspicious that perhaps Mario was being held at that location.
The SWAT team responded and set up outside the apartment. The clock was ticking. They needed to find Mario. In Miami, the FBI and Metro-Dade police were trying to find Mario Portela and whoever kidnapped him. Their first good lead brought them to a Miami apartment where they believed the kidnappers might be holding Mario. The SWAT team quickly secured the apartment and searched each of its rooms. But Mario was not there. It had been a false lead for FBI Special Agent John Gill.
It was determined not only by search, but interview of the people there that they were not related or associated with the kidnapping whatsoever.
Interviewing the caller, agents determined he knew nothing of the abduction and was merely trying to get work with Mr. Portela's company. Investigators again were forced to wait for the kidnappers to make the next move. It was the original caller. He answered the proof of life questions correctly, suggesting Mario might still be alive.
That's correct.
And again demanded $3 million. As instructed, Jesus tried to keep the caller on the line. He said he had spoken to the bank and could only come up with 1/3 of the amount. As Mr. Portela negotiated, agents traced the call to another Miami payphone. Units were on their way. Eventually, the caller agreed to $1 million. Trying to stall longer, Mr. Portela said it would take time to get the money, since the bank was closed for the night. But the man ordered him to have it ready when he called back in 3 hours, with instructions for the drop. Once again, he disappeared before authorities could arrive. Within the hour, Mr. Portela met plainclothes agents at his bank.
Looks like it's all here. You go ahead and sign for it.
There, the FBI recorded the serial numbers of the bills that made up the $1 million ransom, so they could be traced when the kidnappers spent them.
Good. Okay, John? Thank
Yes?
you. Thank you. Thank you.
At the Portela home, agents hid a tracking device in the briefcase, hoping it would lead them to wherever Mario was being held.
Yes. Speaking.
The kidnappers called on schedule and gave Mr. Portela directions for the ransom drop. They ordered him to drive to a local restaurant, leave the car door unlocked with the money inside, wait for a call at a certain payphone, then go into the restaurant and sit down. The caller warned Jesus to go alone. With the loaded briefcases, Jesus began the trip. It took less than half an hour, but to the worried father, it must have seemed an eternity. The restaurant was in a tough and dangerous part of Miami. Undercover agents and Metro-Dade detectives were already there, watching. Agents also manned an empty apartment with a view of the restaurant. Jesus Portela arrived, carrying $1 million in cash and hoping finally to get his son back. But he would soon discover that nothing was as the kidnappers said it would be. Jesus Portela was on his way to deliver $1 million ransom in an unsafe part of Miami, hoping to get his son Mario back. The way he handled the troubling and dangerous situation impressed the investigators working with him, including FBI Special Agent Gil Orantia.
For him to have endured what he did, I have all the respect for him in the world. He performed very, very well. He did the things we asked him to. He did things that probably most of us couldn't do.
The FBI and Metro-Dade police had undercover personnel staking out the restaurant. But the place was closed, and Jesus began to wonder if it was a setup. He found a payphone, though not where the kidnappers said it would be. He was nervous about leaving his car unlocked with $1 million in it. He hoped the kidnappers would call before anything happened to him. If thieves made off with the money, he might never see his son again.
Waiting for a phone call, is that all right?
You cut to be around this area.
Well, I'm waiting for a phone call. Don't you have something better to do?
Keep going.
Though he waited, the phone call never came. Eventually, Jesus had to leave with the ransom money, but without Mario. He and the investigators spent days waiting for the kidnappers to call again with new instructions.
There were no ransom calls that came after the drop failed. We were concerned at that point because obviously our only connection to them were the phone calls. That was our connection to the bad guys. That was our ability to do something about what they were doing. And when they stopped calling, we became very worried.
Although the kidnappers were not leaving new clues with ransom calls, older clues were beginning to pay off. FBI Special Agent John Hanlon was trying to find the car used in Mario's abduction. It was an older blue and gray four-door Chevrolet sedan and had temporary dealer tags, which were not in DMV databases at the time.
And of course, with a paper tag, it can't be traced, so the car looks perfectly legitimate and doesn't draw the attention of law enforcement.
Hanlon knew used car dealerships sometimes illegally rented cars that were for sale, placing temporary tags on them. He began phoning every dealership in the area. The time-consuming work paid off when Hanlon spoke to a clerk at one dealership in Miami.
I asked her, you rent any old cars? And she said, sure, you know, and, you know, any old with paper tags? And she said, yeah. And I said, any old Chevys? She said, yeah. I asked her, I said, any blue and gray ones? She said, yeah. I says, where is it? She says, it's here. And I said, well, when was it rented? And she says, August the 7th. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
August 7th was the day of the kidnapping. When agents discovered the car had been returned the next day, they impounded it to have it searched for evidence. Metro-Dade forensics technicians processed the vehicle. They found no usable hair, fiber, or fingerprint evidence. But they did find a keychain under the back seat. The FBI knew that Mario Portella drove a Volvo.
So we barreled back over there, picked up the keys. We showed them to the family members. Of course, they identified them. It also fit his automobile, and we took it by the house, and the house key fit his home.
It meant that vehicle was most likely used to abduct Mario Portella. Checking records, agents learned a woman named Julita de Parias had rented the car. The clerk at the dealership said the woman came in with a man she said was her brother. Hanlon requested driver's license photos of Julita de Parias and her siblings. 9 days after the abduction, Hanlon met with the clerk who had rented out the car, showing her a photo lineup that included a picture of Julita de Parias, along with several decoy pictures. The clerk identified Julita de Parias immediately.
Are you sure? Positive. Okay, let me ask you, would you look at it? I mean, you had seen this individual before. I'd like you to take a look at it.
The clerk also identified the man who was with her. It was Julita's brother, Julio. Agents were familiar with the De Parias name. They remembered Rose De Parias was the woman who had had the dispute with Mr. Portella the previous year. Julita was Rose's sister. They now believed Julio De Parias was the man who accompanied Rose and threatened Jesus. Although the FBI still ruled out any involvement by Rose De Parias, her siblings were now prime suspects.
Once we had good suspects in this investigation, we put surveillance on some of the members in an attempt to gather more evidence.
The FBI noticed an unidentified man usually accompanied Julita. The couple seemed to be romantically involved. It had been 10 days since the abduction. Agents hoped the suspects would lead them to Mario Portella. They needed to question them, but doing so would alert any accomplices and put Mario's life at risk.
We couldn't exactly jump them at that moment because we were trying to rescue this young man. That was our primary objective, to get this young man back to his family. So we continued to watch them.
The FBI and Metro-Dade surveillance effort included air and ground units. But the suspects seemed to be wary of a tail.
They were very erratic and paranoid in their behavior. Their driving would go in one direction and make a U-turn and go in another direction and then go through a parking lot and then in another direction, which was very taxing on our ability to surveil, in as much as you only have a limited number of automobiles to conduct a surveillance, and when you're passing by the same subject 3 and 4 times in the course of one trip, the chances of being identified as a surveilling vehicle are great.
The suspects' counter-surveillance techniques worked. Following them exhausted the helicopter's fuel supply, forcing agents to turn back. Ground units tried to remain undetected and keep the suspects in sight, but soon they lost them. It was a difficult blow to the investigation. 3 days later, and 25 miles north of Miami, in the town of Davie, Florida, two teenagers were walking in a field when they made a grim discovery that would provide terrible answers to a family hoping for the best. 13 days after Mario Portela was kidnapped, teenagers discovered a body in Davie, Florida, 25 miles north of Miami. Davie police realized it was a murder. The man's head was completely wrapped with duct tape. Detective Ed Taylor faced the challenge of identifying the victim.
All we knew at that time was it was a male. We didn't know how old he was because his entire head had been taped. His hands had been taped behind his back and his ankles had been taped together as well. So at the scene, we really didn't have very much information as to the identity of the victim or how old he was or anything of that nature.
They needed to examine the body, tape, and sleeping bag for more clues and remove the evidence to the controlled environment of the lab. Dr. James Ongley, then Associate Medical Examiner for Broward County, performed the autopsy. He removed the duct tape surrounding the head, careful to preserve each tear and section for later analysis by forensics technicians. With the tape off, Dr. Ongley could describe the victim as male, between the ages of 20 and 40, 5 foot 9 inches tall, with brown eyes and brown hair. Although the victim had been severely beaten, the cause of death was asphyxiation. He believed the man had been dead for 24 to 36 hours. To aid in identification, Dr. Ongley photographed the victim for comparison with photos of missing persons. But he knew the pictures would not be accurate representations of the victim. The tightly wrapped duct tape had distorted facial features, and the summer heat caused significant decomposition.
We took fingerprints from the victim so we could submit them to other departments to see if he had ever been arrested before. We did a press release to the various newspapers with a description of the victim and ran a photograph of the victim to see if anyone could identify him.
On August 25th, a Miami newspaper ran an article about the body found in Davie. FBI Special Agent John Gill noted the description loosely matched that of Mario Portela and immediately contacted the Davie Police Department about the abducted man.
We had received prior dental records of Mario Portela from his family dentist, and those records were in evidence at the FBI office in the event that they were needed to identify a victim. Those records were brought to Davie, Florida. I met with Detective Taylor, and we both proceeded then to the Broward County Medical Examiner's office. Dr. Ongley was then capable, with his experience, to take those dental films or x-rays and compare them to the body and positively identify that body as being our victim, Mario Portela.
For everyone trying to bring Mario home to his family, the news was devastating.
We had to notify the Portela family that the victim had been identified and deceased.
Now agents were investigating a murder. Reviewing the complex case, they outlined their suspects. Julio de Parias, the man who had threatened Jesus Portela the previous year. His sister Julita, whose name appeared on the rental contract for the abduction vehicle. And the man agents believed to be her boyfriend. All three had disappeared. Agents also developed another suspect, Hector de Parias, Julio and Julita's brother. He was close to his siblings and had a criminal record. Now, with no chance of finding Mario alive, the FBI's investigation could be overt. They interviewed the sister of three of the suspects, Rose de Parias, who had threatened Jesus Portela 8 months before the kidnapping. She denied any involvement and offered her full cooperation. She said Julita's boyfriend was Jesse Ramirez, and that if he and the others could not be found in Miami, they most likely went to Los Angeles, where they had friends. Miami agents forwarded the lead to the Los Angeles field office. There, Special Agent Gregory Pack knew they had no time to lose.
It was imperative to find these people as soon as possible, because they are dangerous people, and they are people you don't want on the streets in your city or anybody else's city. If they did this once, kidnapped and murdered, what's to say that they wouldn't do it a second time to some other victim?
Special Agent Pack needed to narrow the scope of the search. He knew the suspects were of Colombian descent, and LA's Rampart district had a large Colombian population.
I went out there with these very good photographs, and I went to all the places that you and I would have to go to occasionally in normal course of living: dry cleaners, restaurants, hotels, motels, apartments. After a couple of weeks of this door-to-door canvassing, I ran across a lady who was the apartment manager. I showed her the photographs.
She recognized Hector, Julita, and Julio de Parias as new tenants, but said they seemed to be rarely at home.
So I left my card with her and asked her if she would call me. And I called her at least once a day. This went on for probably 8 or 10 days. Finally, in the evening, about 9 o'clock, I received a call from the office, and this apartment manager was on the line and wanted to be patched through to me. So I accepted the call, and she told me that the people that I had been looking for were in the apartment now. We approached the apartment house, took up various positions so there wouldn't be any escape out the windows or other doors. And as we ran in the front door, there was a gentleman pointing a revolver at us. So we tackled him, wrestled the gun from him, took him into custody, and then there was another person there.
The man with the gun was Julita's boyfriend, Jesse Ramirez. He was held on charges of assaulting a federal officer. The other man in the room was Hector de Parias, Julita and Julio's brother. He was held on a parole violation for drug possession and burglary. 2 suspects were in custody, but 2 were still at large.
We knew Julita and Julio were still outstanding. So when we left, I had 2 agents remain at the apartment. Several hours later, Julita came back. She was taken into custody, and then she was brought down to FBI headquarters in Los Angeles.
Agents waited for Julio de Parias, but he never showed. The case agent in Miami, John Gill, learned of the arrests.
Gregory Pack, the special agent in the Los Angeles division, called our division here in Miami. I was immediately on an airplane the morning of the telephone call, met with Agent Pack at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Los Angeles, where I briefed him on our experience and knowledge of the case.
Jesse Ramirez and Julita de Parias refused to talk to investigators. But Special Agent Gill and Davie, Florida Police Detective Ed Taylor had more success with Hector de Parias. They needed his help to find the 4th suspect, Julio de Parias. And they needed to know the details of Mario Portella's last days. On September 24th, 1984, the FBI apprehended 3 suspects in the kidnapping and murder of Mario Portella. But a 4th suspect, Julio de Parias, was still at large. Only one of the 3 in custody, Hector de Parias, agreed to talk. Still, he was evasive at first, and investigators caught him in several lies. Davie Police Detective Ed Taylor and FBI Special Agent John Gill decided on the soft approach to get the truth.
We befriended him in this style of interrogation, realizing that the potential was there to develop trust and cause him to, in a sense, confess.
So that we know
on the second day of interrogation, he became cooperative to the point that he was right on the edge of divulging his criminality.
Tell me, Hector.
As he became more trustful of Mr. Taylor and I, he advised us that yes, he would cooperate and divulge details. He was not involved in the abduction, but several days after the abduction, Mario was being held captive in an apartment. The brother, sister, and the sister's paramour discovered that maintaining guard on a kidnapped victim is a lot of trouble, and they needed help. And they knew that Hector was available, that he was unemployed, and that he was addicted to marijuana, could not get a job, and in fact would jump at an opportunity to participate in a venture with financial gain. So they solicited his help to watch a victim, as he put it.
According to Hector, the motive for the kidnapping was actually revenge. Julio de Parias felt humiliated that he could not force Mr. Portela to refund his sister's money after she purchased her condominium. Hector said that after several days, his brother Julio and Jesse Ramirez worried about getting caught and gave up on trying for a ransom. They decided they had to get rid of the only link to them, Mario Portela. So on August 17th, 1984, 10 days after the kidnapping, they decided to murder him. Jesse Ramirez began wrapping Mario Portela's head with duct tape as he pleaded for his life and prayed. As Mario struggled to breathe, Jesse beat him with a metal bar. After the murder, Julio de Parias paid Jesse Ramirez $1,000 for the job. Hector claimed to have no idea of Julio's whereabouts, but he did know where Mario was held and murdered.
Hector not only was able to give us an address of an apartment complex and the building unit, Hector was even able to draw us a diagram of the interior of the apartment, where the various rooms were, furniture, where the murder had taken place.
A team of agents, detectives, and forensics technicians rushed to the apartment in Miami. They secured it as a crime scene and processed it for clues. Any evidence recovered might help put Mario's killers behind bars. But seeing it brought back to investigators the disappointment of not being able to save the young man's life. Special Agent Gil Orantia was there.
As we entered this apartment, we saw a roll of duct tape on the side of a nightstand. We saw a bar that we believe was used to strike Mario with. We saw blood in the apartment. We saw all of these things that sort of put this thing, for us, evidentiary-wise, together. But it was a difficult thing to look at. It was a situation where, you know, our goal was to do the right thing and get him saved, and we couldn't do it. And it was tough. It was tough for us to look at that.
In addition to duct tape, investigators found pieces of adhesive medical tape in the room. They also recovered hair and fiber evidence. Everything was cataloged and sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. for analysis. There, Special Agent Hal Dedman of the FBI's Trace Evidence Unit analyzed the items.
My involvement in the case dealt with the comparison of hairs, textile fibers, and tape from the 4 locations: the body recovery site, the apartment where the victim was held, a car that the body was transported in, and another apartment where clothing from one of the suspects was recovered.
He matched carpet fibers from those locations to samples found on the suspects and the victim. He also compared the tape wrapped around the victim's head, arms, and legs to the rolls of tape recovered at the murder scene.
If you have two pieces of tape that were once original or adjoining sections of the same piece of tape, and that tape is torn, the yarns are not all going to have the same appearance, they're not going to have the same length. You'll have short pieces and long pieces. And you can fit these pieces of tape together much like you'd fit pieces together in a jigsaw puzzle.
Special Agent Dedman determined the tear on the roll of tape from the apartment was a perfect fit with a piece of tape recovered from the victim's head. He also compared the tears on a strip of medical tape found on suspect Jesse Ramirez's shoes to those on the roll of medical tape found in the apartment and to those on a piece from the victim's body. It was another exact match.
Each piece of evidence contributed, and the result was that there was a tremendously strong association between the suspects in this case and the victim.
Jesse Ramirez and Julita de Parias were found guilty on kidnapping, extortion, and murder charges. Both were sentenced to life in prison. Hector de Parias pleaded guilty to the same charges and received 40 years. But the fourth suspect, Julio de Parias, was still out there.
We believed that he could have fled to Latin America somewhere. So we printed up wanted flyers that you'd find in your post office, in police departments. We sent them all over the place, and we developed the same ones in Spanish, and we distributed them throughout Latin America.
Almost 4 years after the kidnapping, in November of 1988, the FBI learned Costa Rican customs officials were holding a man who resembled the photo of Julio de Parias in the FBI's wanted poster. Special Agent Orantia flew to Costa Rica. The man did look like the photo, but it was his voice, the one from the ransom calls, that tipped Orantia off.
I had listened to those phone calls over and over and over again, hundreds of times. I knew that voice. That voice was a part of me as much as anything's a part of me. So at the moment he opened his mouth, that was it. That was it. It cinched it. I knew it was him.
The federal trial of Julio de Parias began 5 years to the day after Mario Portella's abduction. He was convicted of kidnapping, extortion, and murder, and sentenced to life. For the FBI agents who had gotten to know the victim's family, the convictions were important, but not the ending they had expected.
This was a horrendous crime. For some type of justice not to come out of it would have been difficult for the community in Miami and for the family, and I'll be honest with you, for us too, the agents. So I think the idea that some type of justice occurred is paramount. That's the only thing we can cling to, all of us, that at least they were caught.
The Portella family has persevered. They will never forget Mario, and they have not given up their dream. Deep in the hills of Arkansas, an army of extremists plot to overturn the U.S. government. They spread a doctrine of hate, murder, and genocide. Launch death raids on churches and synagogues, bomb public utilities, and gun down a state trooper. Federal agents must dismantle the radical renegades without inciting a bloody war.
In 1984, a tragic murder led agents into the frightening world of domestic terrorism. Law enforcement vowed to dismantle the violent faction that claimed responsibility. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The radical group pursued a doctrine of racial cleansing, an attack on basic American freedoms. The FBI's quest for justice escalated into a brutal showdown, pitting agents against terrorists, fueled by hate.
June 1984. Sevier County, Arkansas. A rural area along the Oklahoma border. Winona Bryant drives south on U.S. Highway 71. Winona is a teacher at a local high school. She's traveling with her children and her nephew to meet her husband for lunch. He is Lewis Bryant, an Arkansas state trooper. He patrols this stretch of highway. Along the way, Winona spots a police cruiser on the side of the road. She recognizes the ID number.
That's Dad's car.
Lewis is nowhere in sight. Something's wrong. Winona tells the children to stay in the car.
Stay in the car.
Then she sees him. Covered with blood.
Lewis? 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 Oh my God, Lewis! Oh God!
Winona struggles to stay calm as she uses the police radio to call for help.
Officer down! Officer down! Please, somebody! Officer down! Somebody!
She tells the dispatcher that Lewis is unconscious. It looks like he's been shot.
Let's get somebody here! He's been shot!
The Arkansas State Police dispatcher alerts all police frequencies that an officer is down.
Interstate 71 North. 2 miles north.
Passing motorists stop to help. Winona can feel a faint heartbeat, but her husband isn't breathing. She administers CPR until county authorities arrive. Paramedics rush Bryant to a nearby hospital, where he is pronounced dead. Trooper Lewis Bryant was a respected veteran of the Arkansas State Police. He leaves behind his wife, Winona, and their 2 children. Within minutes of the shooting, the DeQueen, Arkansas Sheriff's Department receives a frantic call. A driver on Highway 71 reports seeing a brown and white van leaving the scene. It was pulling a homemade trailer. Police in Broken Bow, Oklahoma spot the van heading west. The driver refuses to stop, but police force him to the side of the road. As officers converge on the van, the driver pulls out a rifle and starts shooting. Police strike the suspect in the shoulder. He pulls out a .45 caliber pistol and continues firing. Officers hit him 4 more times, finally forcing him down.
See your hands! Go over on your belly!
Police search the wounded suspect and find a driver's license identifying him as Richard Wayne Snell of Stephenville, Texas. At a nearby hospital, police question Snell.
Told me, and he got out of his police car.
The suspect confesses to shooting the state trooper.
And I rolled out.
Snell tells police he has outstanding warrants in Texas and he was trying to escape arrest. As Bryant approached the car, Snell opened fire. Agents from the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation search Snell's van. They discover a metal box containing a .22 semi-automatic pistol and a grenade.
Tell me something I don't know. Get a shot of that.
They also find suspicious wires attached to the underside of the steering wheel column, leading to the air conditioner vent.
We got wires going into the
They fear the van is booby-trapped. Investigators call in a bomb squad from the Oklahoma Highway Patrol. Technicians carefully examine the vehicle. After several tense moments, they conclude the van is not rigged to explode. The search of the vehicle resumes. Investigators find several more weapons, including a MAC-10 machine pistol. They also find literature printed by a group of white supremacists called the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
You're labeling them all the same. So
The group advocates the violent overthrow of the United States government. In their literature, they call for the murder of government agents and the extermination of Jews and blacks. Police call in Agent Bill Buford of the ATF. Along with other federal investigators, Buford has been trying to establish a criminal case against the CSA for nearly 2 years. Looking for evidence, Buford makes a chilling discovery.
In the van was a briefcase. And in the briefcase was a lot of notes that this individual had put together, different maps. And one of the things that I noticed immediately was a map apparently of my house. The street it was on, the different houses that surrounded my place. And that caused me a little consternation, to say the least. It was later established that they had also been doing surveillance on a federal judge, a U.S. attorney, an FBI agent. For whatever reason, whether they just wanted to know where we lived or whether they were anticipating retaliation for some whatever, that's just left up to one's own imagination, I guess.
Buford examines the weapons retrieved from the van.
One of the things that came to my attention almost immediately was that the MAC-10 had a silencer on it.
The silencer is homemade but sophisticated. Bill Buford believes he has seen one just like it, confiscated just 3 months earlier. In early April, Missouri police caught 3 men stealing a flatbed trailer. In their possession were 3 .45 semi-automatic pistols, 1 sawed-off shotgun, and 1 MAC-10 converted to fully automatic with a homemade silencer. According to an informant, all 3 men are members of the CSA.
The 2 silencers looked exactly the same. And I felt like this might be a break if we could determine that these 2 silencers were made by the same people and were able to establish that they had come from the CSA compound.
5 days after the shooting, on July 5th, 1984, Trooper Lewis Bryant is laid to rest. The funeral is attended by then Governor Bill Clinton Hillary Clinton, and over 1,000 police officers. Governor Clinton makes the investigation of extremist groups a priority.
Is to set up a group comprising members of both districts under the chairmanship of Colonel Goodwin to work on these cases.
State and federal agents probe deeper into Snell's connection to the CSA. The murder weapon in the Bryant case was a .45 caliber Colt Commander. 18 months earlier, the gun had been stolen in a deadly pawn shop holdup in Texarkana, Arkansas. The owner had been shot 3 times in the back of the head. Ballistics analysis shows a bullet recovered from the victim had been fired by a .22 caliber Ruger, the same .22 Ruger found in Snell's van. According to records, the leader of the CSA purchased that Ruger 4 years earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Agents now have enough evidence to subpoena the leader of the CSA to appear before a federal grand jury on gun charges. Bill Buford heads to Mountain Home, Arkansas to deliver the subpoena to the CSA leader at his 200-acre compound. Informants and surveillance indicate that the compound is heavily fortified. Several structures dot the surveillance photos. Agents know the compound is inhabited by the CSA leadership and approximately 65 men, women, and children. They know little else.
Sentries out, about in front of it, stop us, do our checking.
ATF investigators had become aware of the CSA several years earlier. The organization had evolved from a religious group into a violent right-wing militia.
When ATF began to really think that this was more than just a Bible study group was when we were aware of the large number of right-wing organizations that were coming in and doing the paramilitary training there.
About another 150 yards up.
According to informants, extremist groups such as the Aryan Nation, the Posse Comitatus, and the Order frequently visited the compound.
They're watching us tight, so...
A few low-level members of the CSA had been arrested for firearms violations. But the leadership of the group had always managed to evade prosecution for all but misdemeanor offenses. Buford hoped today would mark the beginning of the end for this dangerous organization. Agent Buford meets a man at the front gate who identifies himself as Kerry Noble, the group's second in command.
He went into the compound, and a short time later he came back and said, well, the leader of the group will meet with you, but only you, and you have to go down unarmed, and I have to search you to make sure you haven't got a gun on you.
Buford agrees to turn his weapon over to another ATF agent. He allows himself to be searched. He knows that going into the compound alone and unarmed is dangerous, but there's no other choice.
If one of the people that was working for me or one of the agents under my supervision had wanted to do it, I wouldn't have let him do it. But at the time, it seemed like the right thing.
The stakes are too high. The group is too dangerous. Buford needs to show the CSA that federal agents will not be intimidated. In Arkansas, State Trooper Lewis Bryant is gunned down during a routine traffic stop. Investigators discover weapons connecting Bryant's killer to a group of violent white supremacists calling themselves the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
Oh, we got a grenade.
ATF agent Bill Buford enters the group's heavily fortified compound to deliver a subpoena, ordering the group's leader to appear before a federal grand jury. The ATF agent enters alone and unarmed.
It was kind of an awesome sight. At first glance, it looked like just a community there with a number of buildings. But as you looked closer, you saw that these buildings were all rock structures, very well made. If you looked closely, you could see that there were bunkers dug around the compound itself.
Buford confronts the CSA leader face to face.
I got a subpoena in my jacket.
I explained to him that I had a subpoena from a federal grand jury in Muskogee, Oklahoma, and that he would need to appear on the date on the subpoena.
The subpoena concerns weapons involved in the murder of a state trooper. Investigators have traced some of the weapons back to the CSA.
No, I'm not under arrest.
He asked if he would be arrested. I assured him that the grand jury appearance was all this was. That was not an arrest warrant, that he wouldn't be arrested.
The leader takes the subpoena.
Okay.
His men escort Buford out of the compound. When the CSA leader eventually appears before the grand jury, he denies knowing Richard Wayne Snell, the man who confessed to the murder of Trooper Lewis Bryant. He also claims no knowledge of how weapons traced to him ended up in Snell's possession. On November 1st, 1984, Richard Wayne Snell is found guilty of capital murder in the shooting death of State Trooper Lewis Bryant. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. On the same day, Snell is charged with the murder of a pawn shop owner in Texarkana, Arkansas. In the winter of 1985, the FBI, the ATF, and the Arkansas U.S. Attorney's Office turn up the heat on the CSA. FBI Special Agent Jack Knox has developed a key informant who claims the CSA is involved in acts of domestic terrorism.
He outlined what he referred to as road trips in which he and 2 other members of the CSA were assigned by the leader of the CSA to take in search of businesses or establishments to plunder, or Jewish establishments which they might attack.
According to the informant, 2 years before the murder of the Arkansas State Trooper, several CSA members had set fire to a Jewish community center in Bloomington, Indiana. The informant claimed that at about the same time, the CSA firebombed a church in Springfield, Missouri that welcomed gay members. He also claimed that 3 months later, the CSA attempted to bomb a major natural gas pipeline in Fulton, Arkansas, to disrupt supplies across the Midwest. They were unsuccessful. The pipeline was not damaged. But Assistant U.S. Attorney Steve Snyder could see a dangerous pattern emerging.
There were what appeared to be random acts of violence. But after this individual talked, they no longer became random acts of violence. They became part of a plan to strike out against the United States and attempt to disrupt the activities of the United States and its citizens.
The CSA had evolved from a religious cult into a group of domestic terrorists that had declared war on the United States. In March 1985, a second informant, a former member of the CSA, provides more information about the organization. He gives details about firearms and explosives being manufactured and used by the group. He tells investigators there is a machine shop in the compound where the CSA makes grenades and silencers and illegally converts semi-automatic weapons to fully automatic. He also claims the group has obtained a powerful anti-tank rocket, commonly called a law. The FBI informant reports that the CSA is building an armored tank and that landmines have been placed around the perimeter of the compound. He also provides a laundry list of interstate offenses committed by the group, including transportation of stolen vehicles, mail fraud, and theft of government property. Based on the informant's statements, the U.S. Attorney pursues a warrant to search the CSA compound for illegal weapons and explosives. Assistant U.S. Attorney Snyder intends to use RICO, a federal racketeering statute, to prosecute the CSA. The statute enables authorities to arrest and convict leaders of criminal organizations based on a pattern of illegal activities.
The RICO statute carried a statutory maximum penalty of 20 years, as opposed to the weapons and firearms violations, which carried a lesser penalty. So it was a more severe crime.
If I can show you this bigger map, maybe.
Investigators discuss how to best serve the warrant.
Again, this is the compound.
Bill Buford opposes a kick-in-the-door approach.
It was obvious to me that we were dealing with a very militant organization. They were not, in fact, going to just roll over. If we walked in and say, hey, we're the federal government, we're here to look at your compound, they weren't going to allow us to do that.
To reduce the risk of a violent battle, the FBI would employ the newly formed hostage rescue team to serve the warrants. The HRT was established in 1982 as a counterterrorism unit to work both inside and outside the borders of the United States. In 1985, Special Agent Danny Colson is the commander of the HRT.
The HRT basically are assaulters. It's their job to go into a crisis point and neutralize terrorists and rescue hostages. But this was not that type of situation. These people were very well armed, they were very formidable, and we wanted to avoid a shootout.
Colson establishes a command post in nearby Branson, Missouri. The HRT is composed of 2 elite teams.
Basically, you had a sniper element and you had an operator element. The snipers were responsible for gathering intelligence to give cover to the operators, and the bulk of the team was made up of operators.
Agent Buford, who has been inside the compound, briefs Colson on the layout, the main gravel access road, the front gate, and where the property borders the shore of a man-made lake.
Now, this gate's gonna be very heavily
The first phase of the operation is a reconnaissance mission.
You cannot command and control a crisis situation unless the commander's done a recon. He has to go in and see the ground. He has to know what the structures are like, where they are relative to each other, and what the best avenue of approach to get there in the shortest period of time is.
Tonight, Colson and his team will be the uninvited guests of the CSA. In Arkansas, local and federal authorities believe an extremist group is involved in domestic terrorism. They call themselves the CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The FBI's hostage rescue team prepares to enter the terrorists' heavily fortified compound.
Where the compound is or anything else, last chance.
HRT Commander Danny Colson briefs the reconnaissance team before they go in. The recon team's job is to gather intelligence on the group's infrastructure, its buildings, manpower, and weapons, while avoiding the CSA's armed patrols. ATF agent Bill Buford will act as the HRT's guide. He's been inside the compound and knows the layout.
I had been doing so much work on the CSA and had spent so much time in the woods out around the compound that I had a good idea of the terrain, the fortifications on the compound, and had drawn up a raid plan myself as to what I felt should be done in order to execute this safely.
FBI Special Agent Danny Colson knows the CSA is well armed and dangerous.
These individuals had assault rifles, they had night vision capability, they had an excellent communication system, they were well trained, they practiced their tradecraft, which means marksmanship.
Still, Colson has every faith in his team.
The HRT has excellent patrolling skills, and it was just a matter of relying on our training. You move very quietly, you move very slowly, you crawl on your stomach, you stop and you listen, you look, and you rely on your senses. We would send a person on point. He would scour the area and glass it with thermal imaging gear. You listen to the noise of the forest. If something interrupts that, you know that somebody's there that's not supposed to be.
The team spots CSA guards patrolling the compound. They're armed with assault rifles.
We finally signaled it was safe, and we moved the rest of the patrol in. And we sort of leapfrogged in and out. We had a rear guard to be sure that nobody came around behind us. The thing I was concerned most about, of course, is the law rocket. You don't have to be a real good shot with a law rocket to kill a lot of people. It'll take out a light tank or a bunker, fired into my perimeter, could have killed my agents.
The recon team finally makes its way to the main compound. CSA members, as well as their families, are asleep inside some of the buildings.
The assault team leader needed to know what the structures looked like in case we had to breach them. So you have the possibility that there could be a suicide pact with these people. They might start killing their children. That's happened before, it's happened since then. And so we had to be prepared to go in there to rush in and save innocent lives.
From the reconnaissance missions, Colson now knows exactly how the CSA compound is laid out and what needs to be done.
Well, the thing that the recon really reinforced was that we don't want to assault these guys. I mean, if we had to, we could do it, but there would be great loss of life on their side and possible on our side.
The compound sits on over 200 acres of land. If Colson hopes to resolve this without bloodshed, he'll need a lot more men.
After we saw how expansive this facility was there, I knew 50 men could not hold that perimeter.
Colson calls for an additional 200 FBI agents from field offices across the country. He needs to sneak them into the small community without tipping off the CSA. Knowing Mountain Home, Arkansas is famous for its sports fishing, FBI agents disguise themselves as fishermen. They check into fishing camps located along the river. The plan is to use fishing boats to approach the compound at its weakest point, from the lake. As agents prepare to move on the compound, Colson briefs Special Agent Clint Van Zandt of the FBI's hostage negotiation unit.
You've got about 5 options in any type of situation. You can contain, isolate, and negotiate. You can contain and demand surrender. You can use snipers, you can use tear gas, or you can use a direct tactical assault and just overwhelm them with manpower and firepower. In these last 3, people die.
The decision is made to contain, isolate, and negotiate. Danny Colson is the point man on all 3 phases of the operation.
This man views himself.
I came to believe rather quickly that the leader of CSA is not going to want to negotiate with a lower-ranking FBI negotiator, he's going to want to talk to his tactical equivalent. In this case, it's going to be Danny Coulson.
And I wasn't comfortable with that. I'm a tactical person. I had been a sniper, and I'd been a SWAT team member and a SWAT team leader and trained as an operator. And I was not trained to be a negotiator. And I didn't know that I could pull that off. I'd much more comfortable going in after the guy than trying to talk him out.
But Van Zandt convinces Coulson that he's the right man for the job.
I had viewed a lot of negotiations. I mean, every time a tactical team is deployed, a negotiator is deployed with them, so I'd seen it done. And basically, Clint Van Zandt taught me some negotiation strategies and techniques.
After 10 days of reconnaissance and planning, Special Agent Danny Coulson and the FBI hostage rescue team are ready. Over 200 law enforcement agents prepare to surround one of the most dangerous and heavily armed outlaw militias in the country. In 1985, the FBI closes in on the CSA, a paramilitary organization in Arkansas. Members of the group are suspected of domestic terrorism and murder. Over 200 agents, led by the FBI's hostage rescue team, make their move. HRT snipers and operatives deploy across a lake that borders the compound. Their mission is to establish a rear perimeter. Additional HRT units fan out in the woods, flanking the main compound. The ATF, along with the Arkansas State Police and the Missouri Highway Patrol, set up roadblocks. Their job is to prevent any CSA supporters from entering or leaving the compound. Overhead, an FBI surveillance aircraft called the Night Stalker cruises at an altitude of 50,000 feet. The plane's onboard thermal imaging system monitors movement throughout the compound. FBI Special Agent Danny Coulson.
You could see everything going on the ground. We saw CSA people standing and talking to each other in little groups around the compound. We could see every animal, every deer, every coyote, rabbits running around on the ground, which gave me a tremendous advantage because I could use this vehicle, this airplane, to help me set my perimeter. They could maneuver my people around listening posts. They could maneuver my people around patrols.
Coulson directs the mission from a command and control vehicle near the front gate of the compound. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt, an FBI hostage negotiator, advises Coulson.
It was very prudent to go in at night and to have them wake up the next morning and find that we had walked literally right up to them without them knowing it. We could have come all the way in, but we didn't do it because we want to resolve this peacefully.
HRT snipers surveil the compound from positions inside and near the main gate. Within 10 minutes, they report that 2 men are exiting the compound and approaching their position.
Sniper 1 to command post. Roger. Instructions, please. Have individuals coming out of the compound gate.
Stand by.
Standing by for instructions.
And I radioed back and said, do they know you're there? He said, no, they haven't seen us yet.
The sniper tells Coulson that one man has an assault rifle, the other has a sidearm.
Go back inside. Individuals getting closer, command post. Instructions, please.
Coulson instructs his men to confront the CSA guards.
I said, you hail them, you yell at them and tell them you're the FBI and tell them to go back inside.
You copy? Tell them to get back inside the compound.
The message it sends is that we could have got you, but we chose not to do it. Basically, we are here in force, but we come in peace.
FBI, back in the compound, now! FBI, get back in the compound! Move, move! Move, move!
wanted them to get in the habit of following my orders or the orders of my team, and to show them that we weren't there to hurt them.
We're hearing from the tactical agents that there are lights, that there are activities within the compound.
We'll go with you.
No, you better stay back here.
Moments later, another man walks out of the compound.
Who's out here?
I instructed them to let him get close, and I wanted 2 operators to take him into custody.
FBI, freeze! Don't move! Freeze!
I didn't order him back in because I wanted to start the dialogue. It's time to talk now. Sometimes one of the most difficult things about a standoff situation is finding somebody to talk to. You don't always get them to talk to initially.
The man identifies himself. He's Kerry Noble, the deputy commander of the CSA.
The first thing I said to him is we need to start a dialogue and talk about resolving this thing peacefully. We're not here to hurt anybody. But you're not getting out. And if you start a war, we're going to end it.
Noble says he will convey the FBI's request to talk with his commander. At daybreak, federal agents and local police have completely surrounded the compound. The news media somehow gets hold of the story and converges along access roads. Agents establish a direct telephone line into the compound. A short time later, Agent Coulson receives a call.
The operator called me over and said, it's him, and it was the leader.
Yellow. That's right, I'm in charge of it.
And essentially said the same thing that I'd said to his deputy, is that this is the FBI, my name is Danny Coulson, we have a warrant for your arrest.
And the only way that's going to happen...
The leader agrees to come out and talk on one condition:
Hold on a second.
that he will not be arrested. Otherwise, his people will put up a fight.
Okay.
Coulson agrees to the
got it.
terms.
5 minutes. I'll see you then.
Van Zandt prepares Coulson for the meeting. As an expert in behavioral science, Van Zandt believes the CSA leader will only respond to another commander.
As a military commander, I said, you wouldn't be carrying a long gun or rifle in this type of meeting, but you'd have your 9mm pistols. You'll meet his expectation as to what our FBI tactical commander should look like. He'll be more open to dialogue, more open to negotiations.
Coulson approaches the main gate.
You should always look like you're in charge. But also, you have to bring him out. You have to get him to talk. It's not just you walk up and give demands, you get him to talk to you.
Tensions mount for a possible violent confrontation. FBI snipers train their sights on the CSA leader and his guards.
And you have to understand that this is a man who thought we were literally from the devil, that we were agents of the devil. So trying to create a bond of trust on a road with 2 armies facing each other with awesome firepower is a difficult thing to do.
Coulson tells the CSA leader that the FBI is there to confiscate grenades, assault rifles, the law, anti-tank rocket, all illegal weapons stored in the compound.
And eventually...
I really didn't describe the forces. I just said, we're here, we've been here, we know what's going on in there, and at this point I wanted to remain the faceless enemy. What I got from him was dialogue, which is the most important thing. But what I didn't get was capitulation. He didn't agree to do anything. He just agreed that they would go back in and pray about it.
Well, I respect that.
We'd agreed earlier if he came out that he could go back in. And that's very important. You have to keep that trust.
Coulson and Van Zandt have no choice but to honor their agreement. They allow the leader to go back inside the compound. The first day and night of the siege passes without incident or resolution. On day 2 of the siege, the CSA commander requests another meeting. This time, he appears in full battle dress.
Changing clothing is a big deal. When the leader of CSA puts on tactical clothes, he's taking the presence of a tactical commander.
The leader of the CSA tells Colson that there are people inside the compound who are prepared to launch an assault and break out.
And my patience was wearing really thin by this time. And I said to him, who are you going to fight? You've not seen us. You don't know where we are. We are going to use deadly force on you if you come out with weapons and come onto my perimeter. Who are you going to shoot? You haven't even seen us yet. How are you going to shoot us? It's like you're fighting ghosts, and you won't even know who kills you. You need to come out of there.
Now you get in there and convince them to get out of here right now.
The leader tells Colson he is prepared to come out, but he can't control everyone in the compound.
And he said to me, I need help. He said, there's a man that's our spiritual leader, and I need his advice, and I need his help to convince people that's the thing to do to come out. And I said, who is this? He said, it's Robert Millar.
Robert Millar is a well-known figure in the secretive world of right-wing extremists. It's an unusual demand. But to Van Zandt, it's a turning point in the negotiation.
This situation was either going to be resolved by bullets or it was going to be resolved by trust. Bullets or trust, what's it going to be?
For Colson, it is the moment of truth. He knows that if the shooting starts, there is no telling when it will stop. In the mountains of Arkansas, over 200 law enforcement agents surround an armed compound. Inside are a group of violent right-wing extremists, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. The leader of the CSA demands to see Robert Millar, their spiritual leader. FBI Special Agent Danny Colson decides to use Millar to help persuade CSA members to leave the compound.
This is something totally against FBI policy, to bring in a Confederate into a crisis situation, not just to negotiate, but to go inside. And this is a huge risk. And I thought it was worth taking, given the risk that we were facing.
The FBI flies Millar in from Oklahoma. Special Agent Clint Van Zandt tries to convince Millar that it will be in the group's best interests if he helps bring the standoff to an end.
I said, you know, if you're able to do this, if you're able to resolve this peacefully, you'll be known as the peacemaker within your movement. I said, I don't say that to win you over. I say to tell you that you've got a lot riding on this. And you could see the wheels turning. It was at that moment I thought, he's flipped over on our side. He's on our side. He's going to do it. This was all the chips. We're saying, we're going to bet on this guy that he's going to drive home the message that Danny and myself and everybody else has been delivering for the last 4 days. Now, he's got to close the deal.
Quite a mess out here, it looks like.
And he called on the field phone. And Millar said, well, I'm in here talking to them, but I really haven't got anything resolved. I said, okay, you got another hour. Well, really, we couldn't control him. What were we going to do, go in and grab him by the neck and rip him out of that compound where there was 50 people with guns inside? So you had to be real careful of not, you will be out of there, because then it would have been apparent we were an empty suit. We were a paper tiger, and we couldn't be perceived as that. So it had to be, well, I really need you out of there in an hour. And he called back in an hour, and he said, I need more time with these folks. I think I can do it. I've got them coming along, but I need more time. And we just reconciled ourselves that he's going to stay there the night.
On the morning of April 22nd, day 4 of the siege, Millar and the CSA leadership exit the compound. For the first time since the beginning of the standoff, there are no armed men with the CSA leader.
They came out and they said, we have an agreement that we will surrender. We will come out and we'll give up our arms and walk out peacefully.
Colson receives the news with guarded optimism.
And I said to them, that's a great decision, but I want you to understand that this better not be a ruse for an escape attempt, because you will not survive it. This better be a surrender.
Colson gives the leader 15 minutes to gather his people and bring them out.
And very shortly after, I get a communication from a sniper team that they're coming. They're coming out. The snipers report that they're in civilian attire. There's no camis, there's no battle gear, there's no weapons they can see.
The siege is over. Not a single shot has been fired.
It was an ending that we had all prayed for, and one that we were very fortunate that we had.
ATF and FBI agents carefully searched the compound, accompanied by the deputy commander of the CSA, Kerry Noble. Over the course of several days, they recover hundreds of automatic weapons, homemade hand grenades, and landmines, as well as detonator boxes and plastic explosives. Agents find a Law anti-tank rocket near the leader's house. They find 30 gallons of cyanide stored inside steel drums. Agents believe the CSA intended to use it to pollute municipal water supplies. Investigators also find a steel-plated armored car equipped with a fully automatic machine gun. At trial, the leader of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord is sentenced to 20 years in prison for federal RICO violations. Kerry Noble, the CSA's deputy commander, receives a 5-year sentence for firearm violations. Today, he speaks publicly about the dangers of hate groups and destructive cults. Richard Wayne Snell, already serving a life sentence for the murder of Arkansas State Trooper Lewis Bryant, is found guilty of murdering a pawn shop owner. He is sentenced to death. On April 19, 1995, at 9:16 p.m., Snell is executed by lethal injection. Today, the CSA compound is little more than a collection of abandoned shacks and stone ruins. A small town in Nevada faces disaster. A holiday weekend, 250,000 tourists, and a 1,000-pound bomb that could explode at any second. The device cannot be disarmed. It cannot be moved without detonating.
Here we have the all clear. Stand by for
the
countdown.
FBI, it's a worst-case scenario.
In 1980, the FBI faced the largest explosive device they had ever seen. The bomb was sophisticated, carefully constructed, and designed to destroy an entire building. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Agents and bomb experts responded from all over the country. Their mission, to disarm the deadly device and stop the dangerous extortionists who built it.
State Line, Nevada is a small tourist town straddling the border with California. The town has just 1,300 residents. The largest industry is gambling. With all that cash lying around, it makes an appealing target for criminals looking to make a big score. August 26, 1980, 5:30 a.m. at the receiving entrance of Harvey's Casino. Two men tell security they're delivering a new copy machine. The security guard gives them directions to the executive offices on the second floor. He has no idea what he has let in the building. This is no copier. Shortly after 6 a.m., a security guard making rounds notices something unusual. The door to the executive office is jammed. It looks like the lock has been glued shut. He manages to get the door open. The guard notices a bizarre-looking metal box in the middle of the room. On the floor, he finds a letter. According to the letter, the metal box contains a massive bomb. The guard contacts the Douglas County Sheriff's Department. Captain Ron Perini.
It was about 6:30 in the morning, and I received a call from one of my sergeants who told me that they had found a device at Harvey's Casino.
Perini calls in the Tahoe Douglas bomb squad. The device is huge and made of metal. According to the letter, it contains 1,000 pounds of TNT. That much TNT could blow up everything within 500 feet of the casino. The letter also says the bomb has 3 separate timers, each set for different explosion times. The device cannot be moved. It cannot be disarmed. Unless authorities come up with $3 million in cash, the bomber threatens to blow up Harvey's Casino. He also threatens that if the FBI thwarts this plan, then the bomber will strike the same hotel again.
Yeah, this thing was big, and if it was real, and it did go off at that time, none of us would be alive.
The complexity of the design and amount of TNT tells law enforcement this bomber means business. This device could blow up the entire block, and the police don't even know when it is set to go off. The bomber is holding all the cards.
There was no indication from the bomb squad members that this was a false bomb, that it was just a shell. They felt it was very real. So there was a lot of issues going on at one time. How are we going to secure this? How are we going to provide the safety for everyone?
The casino is packed with gamblers. The hotel is full of guests. With a bomb that size, police have to get the hundreds of innocent people to safety. Over the next several hours, 600 hotel guests are moved to a nearby high school.
And it's scary, to tell you the truth. It's very scary. If this bomb would have gone off in that casino, we would have lost 600 people.
As the guests are being evacuated, Captain Perini assesses the situation and determines he needs help.
We're a relatively small department. We certainly don't have the expertise as some agencies may have in dealing with extortions, and the resources and the money and all the things that go with that to do a proper investigation. So because it was an extortion, we called the FBI immediately.
Special Agent Bill Junkie.
We typically have extortion attempts at the casino, the state line. We've had those before. We've had plenty of small bombs placed here and there in various casinos.
At this time, the FBI was receiving nearly 100 extortion threats a year against casinos, but they were seldom this serious.
But I never, in my wildest dreams, envisioned a bomb of this size and this complexity.
There are 28 toggle switches on the top box. Each one is numbered.
They were all in the same position, in a downward position, except for one toggle switch, which was numbered 23. That was in the up position. We didn't know when we looked at those toggle switches, of course, what they went to, what they were for.
Any one of the switches could deactivate the bomb or detonate it.
They gave me a letter which turned out to be an extortion letter that identified various components of that bomb. And reading that letter, I realized we had a big problem here. The letter indicated to us that there was 1,000 pounds of TNT in this bomb. And judging from the size of the large box, I think it was pretty consistent that 1,000 pounds of TNT could fit into that larger box.
1,000 pounds of TNT has a huge blast radius, enough to destroy more than one casino. That would devastate this small town.
We blocked off the casino corridor area on US 50, made sure no vehicles could go through. We told the other casinos to vacate the immediate area near Harvey's, and they did that. They even boarded up some of the windows to make sure that if there was an explosion, that would cause the glass to break and hurt others.
As the sheriff's department closes down the streets, the bomb squad works on the device. The crew does not wear their bulky bomb suits because nothing could protect them if a bomb this size detonated. First, they want to know exactly what's inside the metal casing.
What kind of bomb is it? How big of an explosion is it going to be? Is it going to affect the businesses across the street? Or how far will it go? Is there chemicals involved? Is there even nuclear stuff?
Herb Hawkins is the assistant special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas field office.
Well, the device was X-rayed in parts because no X-ray machine was that big. So about a third of the device was X-rayed, then another third, then another third.
In all, the bomb squad takes over 200 X-rays. They also photograph the device and dust for fingerprints. Getting paint samples is much riskier, but for the FBI, it could be an important clue to identifying the bomber.
Ultimately, we may find a guy who's got that kind of paint in his garage.
Investigators also find a small drop of blood on one corner of the device. It is collected as potential evidence.
We may be able to find a guy whose blood matches that which was taken off the bomb. That's a good investigative lead for us.
The latent fingerprints, paint, and blood samples are sent to the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. In the lab, technicians will analyze the evidence in the hopes it will lead them to the bomber. But for the agents on the scene, the first priority is to disarm this bomb. In the command post, investigators study the X-rays of the device.
The bottom 3/4 of this lower box was very high density. The X-rays couldn't penetrate it. That told us, in essence, that it was explosive in there, or some kind of material in there filling that bottom box. We could see wires from the top box going into that material in the bottom box. We presume those were wires from the detonators, from the blasting caps, into that explosive material.
Scientists from NEST, the Nuclear Emergency Search Team, analyzed the bottom portion of the bomb to calculate the potential blast radius.
They estimated that we were looking at about a 1,500 to 2,500 foot blast area where damage could be somewhat significant. And of course, inside of 800 yards, we're looking at more than severe damage, and of course, total destruction within 200-meter radius.
We realized this guy knew what he was doing, that it was going to be an extremely difficult bomb to defeat, if it could be defeated at all.
Agents are in an impossible position, but they must find a way to disarm this bomb, and fast, before anyone gets hurt. In State Line, Nevada, extortionists plant a massive bomb in a crowded casino. The bombers demand $3 million, or they will detonate the device. Within hours of the discovery of the bomb, investigators from all over the area arrive in State Line. Sheriffs from Douglas County, police from South Lake Tahoe, as well as El Dorado County. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
They started just flooding in because they knew we would have a lot of work to do. We began bringing in FBI agents from surrounding districts almost immediately.
As bomb experts work on the device, agents go after the extortionists.
We needed every patron in that casino to be interviewed with the chance that maybe they had seen something, a vehicle being involved in the delivery of this bomb, something.
Authorities set up toll-free hotlines. Captain Ron Perini and the Douglas County Sheriff's Department work closely with the FBI.
We want to know if there's any witnesses, if anybody saw these people bring the device into the casino. What about vehicles, descriptions?
The FBI questions the security guard. He tells them about seeing two men delivering a copy machine around 5:30 a.m. They were driving a white van.
We knew that we may have a white van involved in this. We knew by then exactly what time that bomb came through the casino. We knew we had two people pushing and pulling that device.
Investigators try to locate all the white vans in the Lake Tahoe area.
Law enforcement officers were stopping these vans and finding out who the operators were.
While agents on the street search for possible suspects, technicians continue to analyze the device. But the news is not good. This bomb is formidable.
On that first day after the diagnostic work, the x-rays, the interpretation of that extortion letter, we realized that we weren't going to move that bomb. That we in fact had a viable, functioning, live explosive device. We didn't know what the explosive inside was. We also figured we had explosives in that top box that made any sort of render-safe procedure extremely, extremely difficult. By late afternoon, we decided that we were not going to penetrate this bomb with any equipment that we had or that was developed anywhere in the country.
It appears the bomber has won. The FBI must take a new approach. They are going to have to cooperate. That evening, agents meet with Harvey Gross, the owner of Harvey's Casino.
We thought we might have a very good opportunity to arrest, to identify the people involved in this crime through the delivery of the money. So we wanted to comply with the instructions.
The bomber wants $3 million delivered to a remote location via helicopter. In exchange, authorities will receive instructions on how to move the bomb and detonate it safely.
We told them the problems we were having with this bomb, and we had a window there that was closing as far as getting the money together or deciding what we were going to do.
Agents feel that $3 million in cash is the fastest way to find him. The casino owner is skeptical.
And he said to us, "What are you going to try and do with this person?" And we said, "We are going to try and catch him." And he said, "Well, if you're going to do that, I'm not giving him $3 million. So he gave us $5,000, which we appropriately marked, and the rest was cut up paper.
An FBI pilot will fly the helicopter. Since the bomber has forbidden any radio contact, the pilot will wear a wire. He must land at a designated spot at South Lake Tahoe Airport no later than 11 p.m. At 12:05, he will receive further instructions.
He specified that no law enforcement be involved in this operation whatsoever. Well, that was pretty unrealistic. We, of course, had numerous law enforcement people stationed and concealed throughout that airport in an effort to identify anyone that could be seen near that airport that might be linked to this extortion attempt.
The pilot lands at South Lake Tahoe Airport at exactly 11 o'clock. In a nearby building, a team of FBI agents and police monitor the pilot's wire.
We were waiting for contact from the bomber. And at 12:05, just as he said, the telephone rang in the telephone booth.
Okay.
The caller instructs the pilot to look under the shelf of the phone booth. There he will find further instructions.
He read that note aloud as he stood there outside the phone booth. That allowed us to hear and to know what that letter contained, and we immediately dispatched ground units in the direction that he was told to fly.
The pilot is instructed to fly west along Highway 50 at an altitude of 500 feet. At some point, he will see a strobe light where he is to land.
Not much altitude in the mountains like that. Very, very low, very, very hazardous for a helicopter to be that low at midnight. We were going to do the best we could to provide ground coverage for the protection of our pilot, and also obviously to arrest, to apprehend this perpetrator if that was at all possible. So immediately we had cars traveling westbound on Highway 50 for the sole purpose of either one, encountering the subject or the suspect in this case, or two, ensuring the safety of our pilot.
A SWAT team flying 1,000 feet above the FBI helicopter will provide added security.
The thing that always makes you more apprehensive is the unknown. We didn't know who you were dealing with. We didn't know if we had 10 people, 1 person, 2 dozen that were going to meet that airplane.
The FBI pilot flies west, following Route 50. He maintains an altitude of exactly 500 feet as he searches for the strobe light. There is nothing but darkness below. It seems the bomber is playing some sort of deadly game, and the FBI is at his mercy. State Line, Nevada, 1980. An FBI helicopter searches a 15-mile stretch of Highway 50 for a signal from below. The extortionist who planted a massive bomb in a local casino has demanded $3 million. Agents know that appearing to comply is their best hope for arresting the bomb maker. The pilot flies through the mountains in the dark at an altitude of only 500 feet. He sees no signal from below. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins controls the search operation from the ground.
He came back, he flew it again. And he flew it again. We kept sending him back down the route. Then after he got through with his 15 miles, we put him at 250, 300 feet, which he was scared to death. This was an experienced Marine helicopter pilot who joined the FBI. And he's flying treetops, trying to comply with and make this successful. And he keeps calling me, Herb, I got nothing. I have nothing. Everything's quiet, you know. And so I said, okay. Then at 4 o'clock, we brought him back.
Stand by.
It seems the bomber has won again. All the FBI's attempts to establish contact with him have failed. If he doesn't want the money, what does he want? Agents turn to their only other lead, the airport telephone booth where the bomber left instructions for the pilot. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
We, of course, examined that telephone booth for latent fingerprints, and we interviewed a few people, but we basically came up with nothing. Nobody had seen anything at that airport that was suspicious in nature. So that was a dead end. We had not established contact with the extortionist. And that was of grave concern to us because we needed more communication.
The next morning, the FBI asks Governor Robert List of Nevada to hold a press conference. He needs to convince the bomber to reestablish contact.
This request is made due to a failure of enlightenment and a confusion in following the previous directions. The hotel is prepared to comply and is standing by as before.
We had basically silence on Wednesday. I think that the people were too cautious to make another contact.
For the Tahoe Douglas bomb squad, it's a potentially deadly dilemma. How can they move the bomb without knowing what's inside?
It was very heavy. It was made of steel. and it was loaded with up to 1,000 pounds of explosive. We couldn't just pick it up and carry it out of there. We realized to even move it, even if we had a safe way to move it, would require 3 to 4 people. That's way too many to have anywhere near a device that could explode.
Even if they can move the device to the parking lot, then what?
We, in essence, have a giant hand grenade here. If it exploded, it would send steel shrapnel all over the place. We really couldn't afford to have it outside.
Agents and bomb experts do not know if the massive bomb is set on a timer, if the extortionist can set the bomb off remotely, or exactly how volatile the explosive material inside is. They have some hard decisions to make. One member of the team makes a radical suggestion.
Our experts told us, and we all agreed, that if we could explosively separate this top box, knock it off the bottom box at a very, very fast speed with explosives, we could defeat the electrical current from the battery that was being generated and maybe avoid a detonation of the main charge.
The plan is to use 6 pounds of plastic explosives to destroy the top box. In essence, the bomb's brain.
If they could sever that pulse from actually going down to the dynamite, it may not go off.
Everything depends on whether or not the top box is also rigged with explosives.
If the top box contained dynamite, then our explosive separation would fail because, in essence, the bomb would, what we call, sympathetically detonate. In other words, the explosion from our attempt to remove the top box would detonate all the explosives in the bomb.
It's a risky procedure. The entire casino could be destroyed. They need permission from hotel owner Harvey Gross.
And what he did say was, as long as nobody gets hurt, we can't keep doing what we're doing. We're going on for hours and hours and hours, and nobody can come up with a solution other than that, then that's okay. There was tears in his eyes, and he basically was giving us a directive that you take care of everyone here. Make sure nobody's harmed. I don't want anybody hurt. If the device does go off and it destroys a casino, we can rebuild it.
The bomb squad sets up a linear-shaped charge, positioning the explosives to destroy the top box.
Wires were run from the explosive charge to a window outside and eventually to a firing point out in the parking lot.
There is no way to know whether the shaped charge will successfully disable the bomb or detonate it.
We hoped that we would separate that top box and that there were, in fact, no explosives in there and we'd have no detonation. But we were fully prepared, and I have to say we expected detonation of up to 1,000 pounds of TNT, as the letter had indicated. So we were prepared for that when we fired that shape charge.
At 3:55 p.m., Sheriff Jerry Maple broadcasts a warning. The disarming attempt is about to begin.
Okay, we have the all clear. Everybody stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In a casino in Nevada, FBI agents face the biggest bomb they've ever seen. A device packed with 1,000 pounds of explosives. Their only option, blow the control box off the top of the bomb with a small explosive charge.
All you to stand by for countdown, please.
Special Agent Bill Jonke watches from the roof of a nearby casino.
We had high-speed cameras prepared for the detonation. We were watching. We were keeping our fingers crossed. We, of course, could hear over the radio literally the countdown.
4, 3, 2, 1.
The plan has failed. Part of the casino has been reduced to rubble. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins.
We had a major mess on our hands. We had a hotel that had been blown downward 2 stories, blown upward 2 stories. Numerous pieces of device, rebar, concrete, chips, wall, desks, furniture, all mashed up, and in some of it in the hotel, down in the hole, some of it up on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and a bunch of it out in the parking lot.
All of us probably had the same thought. We were thankful that we had not a single person with as much as a scratch. Nobody was hurt. We felt relief that the bomb, in essence, was gone. There was not a danger from that bomb anymore. Having to go back up on it for a day or 2 was getting stressful for everybody. So we felt a relief when that thing went off. If you destroy or damage a building, that can be rebuilt. But loss of human life or casualties is something that can never be healed. Myself and a few of the bomb technicians went into that building right away, right after detonation. However, it was pretty dangerous.
Rubble is everywhere, and the FBI is concerned the rest of the building might collapse. Once it is secured, agents go back into the casino to search for clues.
We commenced a very thorough crime scene investigation, as you would have to do in a bombing case, as your crime scene is really the key to helping you solve the puzzle.
But in this devastation, finding those clues will not be easy.
When a bomb goes off, the components just don't evaporate. They become much smaller and obviously disfigured, but they're there. They're there in the rubble. They're there in the crater at the bottom. They're there. Our job is to find them and identify them as components of the bomb.
Authorities estimate it could take nearly 6 weeks to process the crime scene. The FBI can't afford to give the bomber that much time to cover his tracks. Within days of the explosion, the state-line casinos offer a $250,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of the extortionists.
We hit every news media outlet with that information in hopes of somebody calling. We generated and started a hotline, a 1-800 hotline, so that anybody in the country could call us toll-free and provide information for this reward.
The offer of a large reward brings thousands of leads, but no solid information.
Several days went by. I'd say 7, 8, 9, 10 days. And we got leads from this offer, but we didn't get what we considered to be viable leads from this. The group that was responsible for building and placing this bomb was probably very close-knit, maybe even a family, because we weren't getting any information.
Agents hope that in the rubble they will find one piece of evidence that will lead them to the bomber.
At the end of the 40 days, we'd recovered approximately 108 pounds of a bomb that we felt probably weighed around 800 pounds. So we recovered about 1/8 of it. The items that we recovered primarily were heavy steel items that survived the blast.
As each piece of the bomb is recovered, it is shipped to the FBI laboratory in Washington, D.C. This is the first opportunity the agents have to really study the bomb.
We were able to determine the type of switches that were used, the mercury switches, the type of explosive, pieces of cardboard box, things that would point where and how the device was constructed.
Laboratory analysis tells agents a lot about the bomb and something about the bomber.
One of the early things that we did was have the metallurgist look at the bomb components we were recovering and determine the stresses on those pieces of metal from a metallurgical point of view to tell us what forces were exerted against them in the blast. And by doing that, we could put a family of explosives into this. And while the threat letter said it was TNT, we're not about to take that on face value. We want to know that the damage was consistent with an explosive like TNT, which it was not. So right away we know something about the bomber. He didn't tell the truth in the letter. He was trying to tell us something that would get your attention.
The bomber used dynamite instead of TNT. Because TNT is more powerful, he probably mentioned it to intimidate investigators.
It was a very complex scheme, and therefore, when you looked at the device, a complex mind had to have put this together. A very painstaking, patient individual. This was not built in a day. This was a device that looked like it had taken weeks, if not months, to build. And to build it without drawing attention probably required even more time.
To try and learn more about the bomber, agents asked for assistance from FBI profilers at the Behavioral Science Unit then housed at the FBI complex at Quantico. Profilers determined the bomber is probably a male, in his late 30s or early 40s, with some sort of bomb-making experience. Based on the complexity of the device and the letter, they feel the bomber is egocentric. He believes he can outsmart investigators.
And the bombing profile is extremely difficult. It's not like a murder where the guy leaves certain fingerprints at the scene. Bombing is a lot more complex. Personal, when you shoot somebody, it's more impersonal when you build a bomb and you put it under his car and turn around and walk away. You don't have to sit there and watch.
He doesn't like to get close to his victims. The agents also suspect something other than money motivates this bomber.
Is this a terrorist act? And what's the goal of this particular act? Is it to just make money? Are these people involved with narcotics and drugs? Do we have organized crime, the mafia? We did not believe that organized crime would try and pull this type of thing. We didn't think the druggers would try and pull this type of thing. They like to remain off the skyline.
Investigators are running out of leads, and the bombers seem poised to strike again. In Reno, 40 miles north, 4 more casinos received bomb threats. In State Line, Nevada, the FBI searches for a dangerous extortionist. He's already blown up one casino, and in his extortion note, he threatened to do it again. The FBI fears the bomber is simply toying with them. In Reno, 40 miles north, 4 more casinos received bomb threats. Investigators search the casinos, but no bombs are found. Further investigation reveals these threats aren't connected to the Harvey's bombing. Agents again appeal to the public for help. They distribute descriptions of the suspects based on the security guards' recollections. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins.
We were bombarded with thousands upon thousands of phone calls.
In early September, agents receive an intriguing tip. 3 former employees of a jet aircraft plant moved to Reno just before the casino bombing. According to the FBI lab in Washington, some of the electronic components used in the bomb resemble aircraft parts. Aircraft engineers could have the technical savvy to put together a device like this. Special Agent Bill Junkie.
They fit our profile, if you will, of being a group. They had access, they had experience in explosive work. They looked pretty darn good. And we spent a lot of investigative man-hours looking into these people and covering the leads from this group that extended nationwide. We focused on this group with a lot of our resources for 2 to 3 weeks before we were finally able to eliminate them as suspects.
It's one of many dead ends, and the bomber has gone strangely silent. Desperate for leads, investigators review every phone tip they have received since the bombing. Assistant Special Agent in Charge Herb Hawkins wades through thousands of memos. On October 1st, a small tip catches his eye. A motel owner saw a white van leaving her motel in South Lake Tahoe an hour before the bomb was delivered. From witness statements, the FBI knows that the bomb was delivered in a white van. Hawkins thinks it's too close to be a coincidence.
When I picked that memo up, first it came in on the 800 line and no one looked at it. It's now a month old. And a suspicious vehicle leaving at 4:30 in the morning in a van needs to be covered.
Agents interview the motel owner who called in the tip. On August 26th at 4 a.m., she heard strange noises in the parking lot of the motel.
She awoke and went to a window and saw 2 to 3 individuals in white overalls trying to start a white van. She copied down the license number to ensure that it was the same license number on the registration card.
The next day, she called the FBI hotline. Agents learn the name on the hotel registration card is fake. They run the license plate number of the white van through the California Department of Motor Vehicles.
The information that came back from the DMV check on that license plate was that the vehicle was registered to a Mr. John Burgess, who was a resident of Clovis, California, which is right down by Fresno. Immediately, agents in the Fresno office went to pay a visit to Mr. Burgess and see why that van of his was up at Lake Tahoe and was being occupied by 3 people who appeared to be suspicious.
Burgess tells agents he doesn't know what they're talking about. He owns a white van, but his son usually drives it.
We were unable to gather very much information from Mr. Burgess other than the fact that his son had the vehicle and that his son might be involved in growing marijuana.
Agents interview Burgess's son in Fresno.
You were in Tahoe.
They ask him what he was doing in Tahoe at 4 o'clock in the morning and why he used a fake name on his registration.
The young man told the investigators that he was up at Lake Tahoe looking for a place to grow marijuana. These agents realized that Lake Tahoe is at an elevation of 6,200 feet plus. It is not conducive whatsoever to growing marijuana because of the climatic conditions. So that was a pretty lame excuse.
Agents suspect Burgess's son is lying, but they don't know why. They don't think he's the bomber. At 18, they feel he's too young to construct a bomb this complex. Agents move on, searching for more viable leads.
The investigation into this bombing wore on and on and on. We interviewed well over 400 people, suspects in this bombing, throughout the country.
The bomb caused $3 million in damage. The people behind this must be stopped before they build another bomb. But agents are running out of leads. They have not heard from the bomber in months. By November, all but 16 agents are called home. The investigation is stalling. The FBI tries a new approach.
In the early part of 1981, we decided that we needed to up the ante for the reward. The reward was then increased to $500,000, from $250,000 to $500,000.
If a tight-knit group is responsible for the casino bombing, the FBI is betting that $500,000 in cash should be enough money to tear it apart.
We got our $500,000, and we got the news media, asked them to put this out. We had a small news conference, and it was prolific.
The FBI's gamble pays off.
And it wasn't but a very short time, maybe a few days, that our phone call came in. A young man called the Fresno office of the FBI and told them that we had been close, but we weren't on the right guy. He told us that it was not the young son of Mr. Burgess that we should be looking at, that it was in fact John Burgess Sr. himself who was responsible for this.
The tip makes sense. Although John Burgess didn't appear to be a likely suspect, agents have never resolved why his son was in the Tahoe area when the bomb was delivered. Within days, the entire investigation is moved from State Line, Nevada to Fresno, California.
There was already a resident agency there, but we established another office there, and we brought in another 30, 40 agents to Fresno to begin our focus on John Burgess. I personally believed that this was our guy. There was a family situation involved. He had 2 sons who could have helped him and would not have participated in the reward. They would have kept their mouths shut like we expected. And I moved down to Fresno with great anticipation. I thought, this is it.
The FBI suspects John Burgess Sr. is the casino bomber, but they still need evidence linking him to the crime before they can make an arrest. A major casino lies in ruins, decimated by a massive bomb. The FBI suspects that John Burgess, a Fresno landscaping contractor, is the mastermind behind the devastating bomb. Special Agent Bill Jonke.
Our investigation of John Burgess Sr. included everything we can think of. We talked and interviewed his relatives, his friends. We surveilled him day and night. We checked his background. We checked people who had worked for him.
Burgess has an interesting past, according to Special Agent Herb Hawkins.
He was a Hungarian immigrant who had run afoul of the Soviets during the Hungarian Revolution. He went to a slave labor camp, exiled by the Soviets to that area, and had a great amount of work with explosives.
Through interviews, agents learn that Burgess is in financial trouble. In March 1980, the IRS filed suit against him for $34,000 in back taxes. He also owes Harvey's Casino $15,000 in unpaid gambling markers.
His gaming losses that he told us about and that we had verified through records beforehand only led to make him a stronger suspect, because we always felt that whoever did this had a grudge against Harvey's Casino, probably owed him money or had lost money, so it really fit perfectly into our bomber profile.
Agents feel John Burgess has the skill and the motive to bomb Harvey's Casino. Now they need to prove it.
Myself and another agent were assigned to contact Mr. Burgess every single day, 7 days a week. Just pay a visit to him and talk to him, get him to talk. Some days he'd yell and scream at us and wouldn't let us in. Other days he'd let us in and talk to us.
Burgess is very egotistical. He likes to talk about his successful landscaping business and his skill in electronics. The profilers were correct.
Things started to fall into place in terms of background. Now we needed to find out, there in Fresno, did he build the device there, and where did he buy the stuff to do this?
You have a bombing, one of the first things you do is you start looking around for thefts. Where could this stuff have come from? They could make it themselves, they could import it, they could steal it, they could buy it. You go to the ATF and pull all the theft reports.
Agents learned that 1,000 pounds of dynamite was stolen from a construction site near Burgess's home prior to the casino bombing.
So the puzzle started to come together, and it was time that we got people to start talking to us from inside the family.
Agents interview a member of Burgess's extended family who owns a large turkey farm near Fresno. They're particularly interested in the switches on a feeding mechanism Burgess constructed for the farm.
It was identical to the construction of the bomb. It was the same type of plastic material that he used, the same kind of soldering that he used.
Agents turn up the pressure on Burgess's sons and finally persuade them to talk.
Both kids in general told us the same story, that initially their father had asked them to participate in this extortion attempt. Both kids were not anxious to do it. They didn't want to do it, but they had loyalty to their father. And they at times provided some labor.
Burgess's son admits he did not grow marijuana. He made up the story to protect his father. The FBI learns that 2 employees in Burgess's landscaping business were the men who delivered the bomb to Harvey's casino. Burgess's sons say their father's girlfriend helped write the extortion letter. And they lead authorities to the place where their father hid the remainder of the stolen dynamite.
They also provided us with information about an additional explosives theft that occurred at basically the same site. And they told us where this explosive was buried. 600 pounds worth of dynamite was buried in a dry creek bed outside of Fresno. Mr. Burgess had told the boys he planned to build another bomb and put it somewhere else.
On August 16, 1981, John Burgess is arrested as he tries to leave his home. Burgess and his co-conspirators are charged with commercial extortion and conspiracy. Burgess's sons plead guilty to conspiracy and are sentenced to probation. On April 15, 1985, John Burgess is convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The FBI lost a building, but the operation was a success. No one lost their lives, and the FBI captured the bomber before he could strike again.
So we learned a lot about processing large building bombing. What you have to do first, second, and third, where the pitfalls are, where the dangers are. Now, unfortunately, since then, all around the globe, we've had opportunities to practice the lessons and refine the lessons that we learned there.